See, it's like a conversation. That's what happens in the bookstore. You just start having conversations and it leads you in places you don't realize. So anyway, so I started the Artist Way and I thought that there would be about 6 people here. And there were over 30 people here. And, every chair was taken. And it has been so great because it really has inspired people to get out there and do things. One man who was here, it gave him enough nerve, to actually get in touch with the local restaurant. And now he's going to be playing music there. And he hadn't had the nerve to do that before. And a woman hadn't written poetry since she was a little girl. And so she started writing poems. And another woman submitted poetry, which is the scariest thing in the world, to actually submit your work.
Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Ellie Blue, the Vice President of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
Right. This week, we welcome special guest and member of the increasingly large Bookstore Solidarity Project, the Alibi Bookshop. Can you talk a little bit? Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what makes your store special?
Yeah, my name is Karen Finley, and I am the owner, along with my husband, John Burchard, of Alibi Bookshop in Vallejo, California. And that right there is what makes our store special. There had been a little used bookstore here for a few years, and we moved to Vallejo from Oakland about 7 years ago. And I'm the kind of person that, there are people that can't live far away from water, and I'm a person who can't live from a bookstore. And so we went to the little used bookstore, but it was very small. I want to open a bookstore here, and be careful what you wish for. The owner decided to pivot and do something else. So she asked me if I wanted to buy it. And I was like, oh my God, no, okay. And at the time I was working at Chronicle. And so it was, a huge commute and huge commitment. But Vallejo really, really needed a bookstore, really needed community, really needed that oomph. And so here we are. And it'll be 5 years in June. So yeah, like I said, be careful what you wish for.
What is the alibi? What is your alibi for?
Oh, well, it was called Vallejo Bookstore before we took it over. And the owner said, you should change the name. And I said, yeah, because V is way far down in the alphabet. And so we kept trying to think of names, and I put it out there on Facebook, and people were like, oh, call it Bookem Dano. And I'm all, oh my God, no. But a friend of mine put out that there's this Atlas Obscura article about one of my favorite landmarks in Vallejo, which is the Alibi clock. And it's this clock on our kind of main drag. And it used to be on Market Street in San Francisco. And back in 1917, there was a parade, and there was a bomb that went off and killed a bunch of people. This sounds really uplifting, right? But what's uplifting is that things have always kind of been terrible in the world, but now we just have social media to know every detail of it. So they accused this guy, Mooney, who was a very famous, union leader, and he kept maintaining his innocence. And then a photo came out, and he was standing under the clock, and the time was his alibi. So it was the Alibi clock. So it's a Vallejo landmark. It's got, a weird story behind it, and it's A, so it comes first in the alphabet. So ta-da, there it is. And it's a good logo. So, we have a clock for a logo. So that's awesome.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story. I don't even have to ask you what crime you've committed. So that's even better.
You should never admit to a crime on a podcast.
I know everyone thinks we're a mystery bookstore. I'm like, we have mystery books, but there's also a bar in town called My Office. So, when you can say, why are you so late? Oh, I was at my office. So, Alibi, My Office, there you go.
Amazing. Well, what was your impulse? I guess you talked about why you opened the bookstore, but what was your impulse to go into bookselling, or maybe to go into the world of books more generally?
If you can't tell, I was a nerdy book kid as a child. Weren't we all? I'm always a little suspicious of people who are in publishing but weren't nerdy book children. I'm like, really? Then what are you doing? Because no one's getting rich this way, right? I'm kidding.
Mhm.
Everybody, the book industry should be open to everybody. So my first job was in high school, and that's where I met Leslie Davison. My first job was at Upstart Crow, because everybody else was getting jobs at like Miller's Outpost or The Gap or Contempo or cool mall jobs, or working at Baskin Robbins. My parents are like, yeah, you need to get a job. So I'm like, oh well, I'm going to work in a bookstore. And a couple of years later, here I am, and yay.
Nice.
I have the same job I had when I was 17. So
Love it.
So do I. That's a weird one. And 20, 30 years. Anyway. So what can you describe your day-to-day role there? What makes for the most fun days?
The most fun days. Well, my day-to-day role is everything from, being a bookstore owner. So you have to wear a lot of, and we're a very small store, about 1,000 square feet. And so people here in Vallejo are kind of used to the big box stores, or Costco or all those other non-independent stores. So they're used to huge. So we have to make things very specialized, as all independent bookstores do. So wearing the hats is, receiving and buying and, zhuzhing, call it zhuzhing, and mostly recommending. And then, of course, because it's an independent bookstore, talking to people and listening to people. And, we always joke that there should be a sign above the desk that says psychiatrist is in 5 cents, like Lucy and the Peanuts. It's just a place for people to come, for people to be. And my most fun days, we have a really thriving farmers market on Saturday. Our downtown is pretty depressed. Vallejo was the first city in the United States to declare bankruptcy. It was a Navy town, a military town for many, many years, a very thriving town. And then the Navy pulled out. And a few years later, Vallejo declared bankruptcy. And also what goes along with that is, empty storefronts and a depressed downtown. So we are working very hard to revitalize that downtown. And so it's quiet during the week, but not that quiet. But on Saturdays, it's a farmer's market. And especially on Sundays, people just love to come in and love to visit. And I think I've talked up Vallejo pretty well. So I have, friends coming in. I had a friend from Texas come, the other day saying, I've got to see this place. Well, here you go. Came all this way. So, I just love days where I get to, recommend books to people that they're going to love. And that's a big deal. It is such a big deal, especially.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our podcast is for publishers mostly. Other people are allowed to listen to it, but we try to have some wise words for publishers. So as a former publishing person yourself and a bookstore owner, what do you wish more publishers understood about bookstores?
Yeah. Oh boy. These are the kind of questions that, I took a lot of advice when I was in publishing from bookstores, and I was always like, well, yeah, whatever. And now I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I listen to them? So one of the things we used to do is we'd give specials on certain books, for a certain day, and one of the greatest reps I've ever worked with, he said that your specials are like, you are promoting a tie when you really want to buy a shirt. It doesn't make much sense. So things like that, keep independence in mind. I think what you guys are doing is incredible, reaching out to independents. It's so important for publishers to understand that it is still the independents that are the heartbeat of the book industry. You can give all the co-op you want. You can give all of the deals you want to the A-Word and the big box stores and the other retailers, you know, in your special markets. But what's going to sell those books are the independent booksellers. And you need to talk to them. And it's not just the owners and it's not just the managers. You need to get in front of the actual booksellers who are at the counter. This is something that I feel like a lot of publishers don't realize. You know, when we'd have to go to lunches or do things, it would always be like, oh, let's take out the owner. No, you know, when I was a bookseller in downtown San Francisco and everywhere else, the authors that we would hand sell the most were the authors that were kind to us, the people at the register, because we're at the front line. We're going to say, you know what, this author came in and he was so nice. And one of those authors who was so great, he came in and he was nice to us and we all read his book. And he came back about 6 months later with a pizza. And he said, I don't know what you guys did, but you guys have sold more copies than any other book. And it was this tiny little book called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Remember that?
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, we had a lot of help getting him on the New York Times bestseller list and in front of Clint Eastwood. But he came back and he was so grateful because he was nice to us. And that's what publishers need to remember. And authors also need to remember that. Authors also need to remember not to, you know, just be like, I'm an author. You made it. You sell it. We're all in this together. And I think that's important. Oh, and yeah, you know, more discounts would be nice. Easier
Love
ways
it.
to receive, you know.
Just drop that one in there. I like it.
Yeah.
So I need to report in a brief interlude that I've just learned that the word zhuzh is 1960s British queer slang to mean like make your outfit look more appealing. I had always assumed it was a Yiddish word, you know, to mean like spruce up the place.
Yeah.
But I love it that this just adds like a whole nother layer that, you know, because it just doesn't sound British.
No, I always thought it was Yiddish too. I worked in a vintage clothing store for years too. So, you know, the small business and book business, it all comes out. And that's what my boss would always say. So now I'm like, oh, I've got to go zhuzh. I've got to zhuzh that. And but you know,
yeah, and it is interesting, right? And I too, whenever I've talked to like a very green bookseller, they're always the ones that are like, hey, are you talking to me? Like they're just not used to being acknowledged whatsoever because they think of themselves, you know, they've maybe been made to feel unimportant their entire life. So then when you're like being nice to them on a very baseline level, it goes a long way. Yeah, like they remember that. And as you have pointed out, people stay in the industry for decades. So they may not be influential today, but they will be, you know?
Yeah.
You know? And
now, you know, also when you're talking to a young bookseller, the young booksellers are the ones who are reading the Sarah J. Maas and the romantasy and all of that. That's not necessarily something that I'm reading, you know, so they are so important. And those are the people who are coming into the stores now. You know, Gen X is jaded. Everyone's married to their phones. Everyone's, you know, worried about things. But these kids, man, they're our future, like Whitney Houston said. So having these younger booksellers, people behind the counter, that is so invaluable because the owners are. A former bookstore owner told me that she read less when she owned the bookstore than when she didn't. And it's true because I mean, we are reading book reviews. We are reading, you know, oh my God, what's happening in the world? You know, I'm trying to read shelf awareness every day. I'm trying to, you know, figure things out. I am looking at spreadsheets. I'm, you know, exhausted from waking up in the middle of the night going, oh my God, I didn't do that. But the booksellers aren't necessarily doing all that. So they're the ones who are actually sitting down and reading these books. And they're the ones who are going to hand sell, you know, they're going to say, I really loved Gothica or Feybound thing. You know, those aren't books that I would necessarily know that anyone would love. And connecting somebody with a book that they're going to love is one of the most important things in the world. I know that sounds trite, but these days there's so much vying for attention. And getting someone to walk out the door with a 400-page book, that is an investment of your time, of your emotions, of your heart, of your money. I mean, here, let's be real, independent bookstores can't, sell things for $8, just to manipulate you to get more things in your cart. It is a serious investment. So you have to invest in the people in the bookstore, customers and workers alike. Not that I have workers, but because I'm still small beans. But
One day.
selling books to somebody is a big deal. One day.
Okay. Is there so what are the things that publishers seem to think are important but doesn't actually matter? Other than bosses.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been on that side of the desk, which is fine. I miss it. I miss my cubicle a lot. There are days where I just would rather just be in my cubicle working on a spreadsheet. I never in my life thought I would say that. But I'll go to Winter Institute and I'll be in their shoes and I'll be in a bookseller's shoes. And I don't know. Let me think. Publishers, I know. There's a lot I could say and a lot I don't even know. Like I said, discounts are everything. Investing in independence is everything. What you guys are doing is absolutely, paramount. Not giving so much lip service to Amazon and the big guys. Ingram is still really, really important. Invest in Ingram. Make sure the supply chain gets to Ingram, because that is how we are, getting, on time books. Just publish good stuff. Seriously.
Really good stuff is a pretty important one.
Yeah, that's the number one important thing. Find us that thing that's gonna unite people again. I mean, yeah. Make it easier for us to figure things out. I don't feel like wading through 8 billion pages of Edelweiss, but that's just me. I don't have time. Other people, that's their full-time job and they love it. And I love it too. But so yeah, give us more incentives. Make the incentives easier. Make the co-op easier to find and do.
I like that.
Yeah. Good advice. So as a bookseller, what is the most important thing about the work to you?
Like I said, the investment in time and money. Selling books is a big deal. But, so much is changing in the world very quickly. And, we see things like, big companies going out of business. Life is changing and life is scary a lot. But one of the things that can help so much is empathy and critical thinking and community. And those are three of the main things that bookstores bring. Not to mention local taxes to fix your potholes and your infrastructure and all that, kind of boring stuff. The shop local thing is also very, very important. And bookstores anchor a community and bring in more business. So cities should recognize that and make it very easy and welcoming for bookstores. But I think that community is the most important thing. It's an election year and we all know how those go. And, people kind of need to protect themselves in a way, and have empathy and critical thinking. And so one of the things I was thinking about, like, how can I help my community? How can I help myself so I can help my community? I can't do that much. I can vote. I can do what it needs. But I was thinking that a good thing would be doing the artist's way. Are you familiar with the artist's way? Oh yeah, you sold like 8 billion copies in your life, you know? And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sold. I remember when it came out. And I did it during lockdown just because I didn't know what else to do with my life. And it was it's very 1990s, you know, it's written very 1990s, you know, and at our meeting the other night, you know, you get into clusters and I looked out and there's, you know, about, oh God, there were about 8 clusters in the store and it's all these people talking together and telling about their journey. If we're talking about the artist way, we'll talk about the journey. And they were all laughing and it made me feel like everything, all the sleepless nights and everything has been worth it, you know, just seeing this community coming together.
You're like actually changing people's lives and helping them follow their dreams.
Well, you know, that's what a bookstore should do. It has to be a community center. You know, I mean, let's face it, not everybody is going to go out and buy the brand new bestseller anymore, the New York Times, you know, #1. There are a few people, but there's just so much out there now. And bookselling has changed in the, you know, several years that I've been in it. So community, you know, and everybody was saying sidelines, and sidelines is great, you know, and stickers. We sell a lot of stickers and socks and good things like that. But I think the most important thing for bookstores and for us especially is community, because we have a lot of people moving here. We have a lot of people who have been here and who are cynical. Um, it's all about, you know, what Neil Gaiman says, a town isn't a town without a bookstore. You know, you should take a poll on how many bookstores use that line. Neil Gaiman should be making millions of dollars from that. And it that is just what's so important, that it's got to be a community based type of thing. You know, I sometimes I think, oh, it'd be so nice to be like, you know, that British TV show about that curmudgeonly, you know, bookseller who yells at all of his customers and drives them out, and you know, they just kind of hide in their back room and everything's dusty and there's coffee spilled everywhere. You know, I think, oh, that would be so nice. But that is not bookselling. Bookselling is activism. Bookselling is, you know, empathy teaching. Bookselling is book clubs and community. And you know, our booksellers, our book clubs are extraordinary, and thoughtful and kind and philosophical, and it's not me. It really is the people who live here. So I just give them a very small space to do it.
Nice. I like that though. And I like that you're like actually like you're fostering your community. You're not just, you know, making the communication bi-directional. That's not, you know,
Yeah.
that's, I feel like that's an independent bookstore thing too, where it's not just like based on commerce.
Right.
So,
and that's something that publishers should know, that independent bookstores are so much more than selling their books. Give us the tools to make their books part of the community, as opposed to putting their books into the community. You know what I mean? There should be more things. When I was at Lonely Planet, we always tried these programs, but they didn't really work because, again, we were trying to sell them the tie when they really wanted the shirt. But I love the idea behind it, you know, and encourage people to travel, get out there, you know, have different themes. Give us those tools. And make it easy for people like me to find. You know, I'm not necessarily going to be on Edelweiss all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you like? How do you see those tools? Like, what do you think of as the like? What are you picturing here exactly for that publishers would be providing for you?
I don't know. I want them to magically come up with something. And we're so small, we don't really have a lot of reps. So a lot of that is on me. So, which, you know, makes things a lot harder. I know I could make my job a lot easier and get reps, but then we would have to, you know, buy a warehouse for all the books I get excited about. Yeah. But yeah, I just something. I don't know. I don't know. Winter Institute twice a year, and cheaper. In nicer locations that aren't freezing cold. But anyway, don't put that in. I appreciate the American Booksellers Association so much. I do. I love the American Booksellers Association. So a lot of the onus is on me because I'm too busy to really check. But I just give them something to think about how they can be part of the community, how they can, offer, let's say, how do we get into schools? What can we do? How can the publishers help get kids into school? Offer things to do reading incentives, for the kids, do more things like Independent Bookstore Day. I love Independent Bookstore Day and all the cool things, why not have something like that, for Read Across America Day, stuff like that.
That's a great
Now,
idea.
I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's their job. That's not my job anymore. Just kidding.
Congratulations.
So what is an emerging trend that your customers want that isn't yet like something publishers have picked up on?
So one of the things that I've noticed is that people of all ages, of all generations, all backgrounds, races, gender, whatever, people are really into the classics lately. I think that book talk is an influence for that. I think people want to be more well-rounded and maybe a little bit of FOMO, like they feel like their life is going to be, suddenly fall into place if they know what Pride and Prejudice is all about. So I have these young women who come in and they'll hand me a list of books, and it will be things like, of course, The Bell Jar and Girl Interrupted. We love those tragic heroines. But it'll also be things like Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre. And if you haven't read Jane Eyre lately, it's amazing. But then we'll have older people, even older than me, who will come in and be like, I never read Moby Dick. I feel like I need to read Moby Dick, and I need to make up for things that I might have missed in school. There are book clubs, classic books, because there is this feeling of, wait a minute, I might have missed out on something. And, it's a chance to put down their phones. And my advice is that publishers find these books that are in the public domain or whatever and put them in larger print. That's what people ask for all the time. And we will have people who will pick something up and they'll be like, oh God, the print is so small, I can't read this. I'm just going to get it on my Kindle. That is like the worst thing you can possibly hear in an independent bookstore. Oh, I'm just going to get this on my Kindle. That's not what we want to hear. That's not what we want. So guys, think about, forecasting for more paper and bigger fonts for all of these classics. Not like huge, not like large print, but just a little bigger. I think that'd be amazing.
Well taken.
That's one of the right answer.
And as well that we
and also fantasy, as I was saying, romantasy is the big thing right now. Romance, but these are all trends, but they don't quite go away. Like I always think they will. I really thought dystopia would go away, and here we are. But kids, young people, you always look at what the young adults are looking at as far as trends, and they want a lot of queer love stories. They're cis kids. They want that. They love that. They love Casey McQuiston. They love Aristotle and Dante. The Heartstopper, we can't keep it in. I mean, those are the big deal. And when I was growing up, books like Forever were so racy and oh my God, Annie on My Mind, those were such a big deal. These are not a big deal anymore. And that is what is so glorious about it, and, find good books, and not just like quick, money makers, keep out there. Somebody said to me the other day that they feel like that there aren't enough editors anymore because they keep finding things wrong in books. And we're talking from big houses. They're finding typos and grammar and everything. We just need to kind of slow down maybe a little bit. Maybe not make the publisher's bag so big for the reps and do quality over quantity. I I worry about that. I'll see that, the new season has, oh God, 800 books from all their imprints. Independents can't do things like that. And frankly, neither can anyone. So stop it. Stop it.
Good advice. And we've urged similarly that you're like, okay, you don't want to, just because the market is more crowded and sales are less assured, doesn't mean that publishing more books will have good results. Like, it just
Right.
compounds the problem.
Exactly.
And the good news, I guess, is the paper shortage has abated, and now we just need to like all acclimate with that new old normal. On a charming note, do you have a funny bookstore story to share with our audience?
Oh, I've got lots.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah, I call them book stories. Let's see. One that I think is really funny is this man walked in, and he walked in the door, and he, made this big pronouncement, and he's like, a bookstore in Vallejo. No one in Vallejo knows how to read. And I said, wow, okay, well, that's not true, and that's not fair, and that's not kind. He's all, okay, fine, no one in Vallejo reads. And I'm all, again, name another bookstore that has a Joan Didion book club, sir. Meh. So it was gross, but it was funny. And what I love is that I get to prove that guy wrong every single day. People in Vallejo do read, and that they care, and they're compassionate, and they're reading Moby Dick. They're reading Abraham Verghese. People in Vallejo not only know how to read, they know how to read well. And so it's my honor to be the bookseller here and to promote literacy in Solano County. And we have this very famous librarian, Michael Threets. He's that wonderful librarian on Instagram and TikTok, and he promotes literacy too, and Library Joy. And so here we get to promote Book Joy, and he is as nice as he is online. He's so sweet. And so I don't know how funny that is, but kind of funny, nobody's wiping tears away from their eyes from laughing so hard. But I
want to know what book that guy bought.
Yeah.
He didn't. Of course he didn't. Of course he didn't buy a book.
Because he's the one who doesn't read.
Exactly.
Right.
And he was talking about where he lives, and he'll go to the book there. I'm like, okay, whatever. And yeah, most of the people who complain don't buy books. And I mean, there are funny things. We always have funny customers. We have funny characters. A bookstore attracts characters no matter where it is. You're going to find, the one person who is really into collecting that certain kind of centipede or whatever, I don't know. It's pretty great. It's pretty dreamy.
Well, do you have any final parting words of wisdom you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Oh, God. I mean, I can be really cliche and say, read more. Please read more. Read 20 minutes to half an hour every day, and you will see changes that you can't even fathom. Reading is not a solitary thing. It is, well, the act of reading is doing, solitary. You don't want anybody interrupting you, but make a community around books. Start a book club. Starting this book club book clubs, plural, has been one of my great pleasures in life, and getting to know these people. And, that has been really special. The only way you're going to learn about anything going on is by reading and then being somebody else for 20 minutes a day. Right. Just and put down your phones. I'm such a hypocrite when I say that, but put down your phone and see how the rest of the world is.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Karen. This is Karen Finley from Alibi Bookshop in Vallejo, California. Please go visit her when you are in that area.
And divorce your phone in the store performatively.
You can take pictures and videos as long as you just don't, buy the stuff on the A word,
Yeah, Yeah.
You can put us on Instagram. That's always fun. Talk in person. Don't just leave comments. Don't read the comments. Conversation. More conversation, less comments. There you go. That's my advice.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
On Twitter at Microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.